Alright, good afternoon guys. This is the video for tomorrow, Tuesday, April 23rd. We're going to start off by reviewing for our final exam. Before I do that, I just want to remind you, tomorrow's the big day, juniors, for your ACT. And you've worked so hard and you've come so far, and I know that you're going to be great. Go in there confident, positive, and I know that you're going to shine tomorrow. So please get a good night's rest, and you're going to do awesome tomorrow. I know you will. Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're going to start by reviewing for our final exam. This is the last part of Chapter 5. You need to know, on Monday we reviewed graph and sine and cosine. Well, now we're going to review graph and inverse trig. This was one of y'all's favorite topics. Alright, so let's review for a minute where inverse cosine, inverse sine, and tangent live. Alright, remember, inverse sine lives in the interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. That means your answers have to fall in between those two. That's quads 1 or 4. Inverse cosine lives in quadrants 0 to pi, which is quad 1 or quad 2. And then arctangent, or inverse tangent, lives between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, but remember, they're parentheses, they do not include those, so that's 1 or 4. So that's what we're going to do today. Alright, so looking at number 1 here, the arc cosine of negative 1/2. We have to think, what family has an x value of 1/2? Well, that's pi over 3. It's negative, would it be in quadrant 1 or 2? 2. So what pi over 3 family member lives there? 2 pi over 3 would be your answer. Number 2, arc sine of square root of 2 over 2. That is the y value. Sine lives in quad 1 or 4. Since the sine value is positive, it'll be quad 1. That's pi over 4 family. Pi over 4 lives in quad 1. Number 3, arctangent. Arctangent lives in quads 1 or 4. Cannot include these two. It gives a tangent of negative square root of 3 over 3. That's a negative right there. That's quad 4. You have to think, what family gives me a tangent of square root of 3 over 3? That's pi over 6. What family member lives in quad 4, pi over 6? Well, 11 pi over 6 does, but remember, 11 pi over 6 does not live in this interval. What's another way we could write that? As negative pi over 6. Remember, you can stop the video and replay it at any time. Alright, number 4, we're going to work from inside out. Arc sine of square root of 3 over 2. That's a y value, positive. This will mean quad 1. Which one has that? Pi over 3. So it'll be cosine, and your sine is positive. So if you think, what pi over 3 family member lives in quad 1? Pi over 3. So I'll write cosine of pi over 3. Where that would equal positive 1/2 as my answer. Work from inside out. Alright, cosine of 7 pi over 6. This is straight trig. Cosine of 7 pi over 6 is negative square root of 3 over 2. It's in quad 3. Remember, that's regular cosine. Now we have to pay attention to arc cosine. Arc cosine. It lives in quads 1 or 2. It is negative. Your x value is negative, so it would be quad 2. What family member lives in quad 2? Of pi over 6, because your x value is square root of 3 over 2. That's pi over 6 family. It would be 5 pi over 6 is your answer. That would be your answer for that particular problem. Okay. So that completes Chapter 5 review. We'll start on Chapter 6 Thursday and Friday, and some at 7. But please start studying ahead, okay? This is a big test next Thursday. All right, let's look at your homework from Monday night. We started talking about the concept of a derivative, and we talked about the derivative deals with the instantaneous rate of change, what is happening at that instant moment, what's the slope of the tangent line at that instance. So we have to find the derivative, which is aka the slope generator, and then we can plug in values to that to find out what is the slope of the tangent line at that very instance, okay? So the first one we had was number 15. Number 15. We had f of x equals negative 3x plus 7. And we want to know what's going on. X equals 1, x equals 4. I'm just going to write that up there for later on. Remember our formal definition of derivative. The limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Alright, I need to find the f of x plus h first. Plug that in for my x, negative 3 times x plus h plus 7. That gives me negative 3x minus 3h plus 7. Find f of x. Plug x in. Doesn't change it. Now I'm going to take these two parts and plug in my formula. The limit as h approaches 0 of negative 3x minus 3h plus 7 minus negative 3x plus 7 all over h. The limit as h approaches 0, we're going to rewrite it. Changes signs in the second parentheses. Remember, I did it right when everything that doesn't have an h cancels out. Boom, 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 boom. I'm left with the limit as h approaches 0 of negative 3h over h. Thus, h and negative 3 doesn't have a plus in between or a minus, so it can't cancel out. So your derivative is negative 3. So I could rewrite that as f prime of x equals negative 3. That is my derivative. That's my aka slope generator. You might say, Mr. Hester, okay, that's my slope generator, but how do I do these when there's not a x in there to plug it back in? Well, if you cannot plug it back in, then you're automatically, your slope at x equals negative 1 is negative 3, and at 4 is negative 3. And since they're both negative, that means the graph is decreasing at that moment. Okay. Number 17. F of x equals x squared minus 6. Alright, we're going to find the derivative first. The limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x. I'm not going to give you this formula test, so you got to know this by heart. I'm going to come to the side and find what x plus h is. Well, when I square this is just coming to the side and multiplying these two quantities together. I'm not going to do that because you should be able to do that. But this is x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 6. Now I'm going to find f of x. Take x, plug it in for x. That's what I get. Now I'm going to take this and plug it back in the formula. The limit as h approaches 0 of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 6 minus x squared minus 6 all over h. The limit as h approaches 0 of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 6, it changes sign, minus x squared plus 6 all over h. Remember, everything that doesn't have an h should cancel out. Boom, boom, boom. The limit as h approaches 0. Now, we look here. We plug 0 and we still get 0 in the denominator. So we're going to do a toolkit strategy for limits. I'm going to factor out of h. H is cancelled out. Now I plug 0 in. 2x plus 0 would just be 2x. So my f prime of x equals 2x. That's my derivative, aka slope generator. Now number 17, I want to know what's going on at negative 1 and 3. So now I'm going to plug that in. F prime of negative 1 equals 2 times negative 1. That's negative 2. I get a negative value. It means the graph is decreasing. Now F prime of 3 equals 2 times 3. That gives me a positive. That means the graph is increasing. So that's my derivative, and here's my slopes of my tangent lines at those instants. My IROC, my instantaneous rate of change. Okay, let's look at 19. f of x equals x squared minus 3x plus 5. I'm going to find my derivative, aka slope generator, for the tangent line. So limit as h approaches 0 of f of x minus f of x all over h. Come over here, find f of x plus h. I FOIL that out. X squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 5. Cannot combine anything there. Now I'm going to find f of x. Take x, plug it in, I get the same thing. Now I'm going to use this and this to plug in my formula. The limit as h approaches 0 of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 5 minus x squared minus 3x plus 5 all over h. Rewrite that. The limit as h approaches 0 of x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 5 minus x squared, changes all sign, plus 3x minus 5 all over h. Remember, everything that doesn't have an h should cancel out here. So let's look for our x squares. They cancel out. Our negative 3x and 3x cancel out, and our 5 and negative 5. Now I plug 0 in, I still get 0 in the denominator, my factor. Take an h out, that leaves me a 2x plus h minus 3 over h. Now those cancel out. I plug 0 in for h, not x for h, because h is approaching 0. So that gives me 2x minus 3. So my f prime, my derivative, my slope generator, formula for my slope generator, 2x minus 3. Alright, I want to know what's going on at 3 halves. So f prime of 3 halves equals 2 times 3 halves minus 3. That gives me 0. It means the graph is at a turning point, changing from increasing, decreasing, or vice versa. Now f of 2, that gives me 1. That's a pause. That means it's increasing. Okay, you stop the video in a moment to review it, rewind it, pause it, etc. Number 21. F of x equals x cubed plus 2. Alright, this is going to take a little bit because you've got to cube something. H approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So f of x plus h cubed, equals x cubed plus 2. I'm going to plug that in for x. Yes, you got to cube that out, guys. And when I mean that, it's going to be x plus h times x plus h times x plus h. You know the first one, x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. We FOILed that so many times, you should know that one. Now I'm going to distribute the x squared. It's going to be x cubed plus xh. I distributed that. Now multiply that plus 2x squared h plus 2xh squared. Now plus h squared x plus h cubed. Plug that in here. The limit as h approaches 0 of x cubed plus xh plus 2x squared h plus 2xh squared plus h squared x plus h cubed. Now if I take x, plug it in, it's not going to change it, so minus x cubed plus 2 all over h. The limit as h approaches 0 of x cubed plus xh plus 2x squared h plus 2xh squared plus h squared x plus h cubed minus x cubed minus 2 all over h. Remember, what doesn't have an h, you cancel out. Boom, boom. Oh, guys, I forgot to put the plus 2 on here, so this should be plus 2. So plus 2, those 2's cancel out. Sorry, forgot to go back up there and put it with a plus 2. So the plus 2 cancels there as well. I take 0, I plug it in, I still get 0, so I'm going to factor. Take an h out. Took an h out, that leaves an x, 2h squared, alright, these h's cancel out. I plug 0 in, I get x plus 2x squared. Hold on. Oh, Miss Chester made a mistake over here. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times h is x cubed h. Whoa. X squared h. Okay, there you go. I made a mistake right there. X squared times x, x cubed. X squared times h is x squared h. So that should be, right here should be x squared. So that would make that x. Okay, now that equals, because all this gone, 0, 0, 0, that makes that 3x squared. So your derivative, f prime of x equals 3x squared. Sorry about that. Lesson, take your time there. 21, if I plug -1 in, f prime of -1. That would be 1 times 3 is 3. It's a positive, means the graph's increasing. F prime of 1. That would give you 3 as well. It's increasing. Take your time there. I messed up on multiplying here times 0. The x squared h. That would make that x squared h. And that would make it x squared. And then you can combine your like terms there. Sorry about that. Like I said, you can pause it and go back and review. Alright, we're going to look at 2 more problems today. It's on page 18 in your notebook, number 7 and 8. The ones we didn't get to, number 7 and 8. Okay? Okay. I want to find the derivative of this, the limit, as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Okay, I'm going to find this first part. F of x plus h equals 1 over x. That would just be 1 over x plus h. Take x. F of x would just be 1 over x. So now I'm going to plug that in. The limit as h approaches 0 of 1 over x plus h minus 1 over x all over h. Alright, so we take 0, plug in it, we got a problem. But we're not factoring here, we're going to find a common denominator. So So I'm going to come over and find a common denominator. Common denominator would be x times x plus h. Everything builds in here, guys. That's why we learned this last. If I multiply this by x, I'm going to multiply that by x. Here I multiply the bottom by x plus h. Here will be x plus h. I'm going to put that 1 there to remind you to distribute that negative 1. So it'll be x minus x, because negative 1 times x, negative 1 times h. These cancel. You're left with negative h over x times x plus h. So I found a common denominator. Here, we got x times x plus h, x times x plus h. What is this missing? An x. I'll multiply the numerator out. This is missing an x plus h. I'm going to multiply that. Then I distribute the negative 1. That cancels out. I'm left with that. Now I'm going to take this, plug it back up in here. Negative h over x times x plus h all over h. Well, still I get 0. Well, I'm going to write out what this means. Negative h times x plus h. If I was dividing by this, I'd be multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to go and put that. Multiply. Cancels out. I'm left with negative 1 over x times x plus h. Well, let's try direct substitution now. Plug in 0 for h. X plus 0 is x. X times x is x squared. So my derivative is negative 1 over x squared. So f prime of x equals negative 1 over x squared. That's my derivative. Now I want to know what's going on at negative 2. So f prime of negative 2 equals negative 1 over negative 2 squared. That'd be negative 1/4. F prime of 2 is negative 1 over 2 squared. That 2 will be negative 1/4. So both of those will be negative 1/4. That means the graph is decreasing. So there you had to find a common denominator and go from there. So a common denominator, you had to divide, which multiply by reciprocal, and so forth. You might need to rewatch that video, rewatch this problem if you did not understand that. Number 8, the last one. F of x equals square root of x. The limit as h approaches 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. F of x plus h equals square root of x. I plug that in, I get square root of x plus h. Well, I think we're going to have to rationalize in this one. F of x equals square root of x. That stays the same. So the limit as h approaches 0 of square root of x plus h minus square root of x all over h. Take 0, I'll plug it in. Does not work. I'm going to have to rationalize the denominator. 4, that gives me x plus h because it cancels out. Now let's think about this here. This times this, this times this is a positive, this times this is a negative. That's going to be hard for you to, I'll go ahead and write it, but it's about to be confusing. If you need to see it. But you see, it's the same thing, just cancel out. It's positive and negative, so I'm going to go and cancel that out. And this times this give you a negative x. The square roots cancel out. H times this is h square root of x plus h. H times this. Alright, look here, my x's cancel out. I still can't plug 0 in, I get 0, but I got an h here left. I can factor h on bottom. Cancel out, I'm left with 1 over square root of x plus h plus square root of x. I'm going to plug my 0 in now. X plus 0 is 0, so I got 1 over square root of x plus square root of x, which would be 1 over 2 square root of x. That is my derivative. F prime equals 1 over 2 square root of x. Okay, I want to know what's going on. F prime of 36. So about 1 over 2 square root of 36. That's 6 times 2 is 1/12. It's increasing. That's the slope of the tangent line at 36. Now f prime of 81. 1 over 2 square root of 81. That'd be 9. That'd be 1 over 18. It's also increasing. So that is my work from number 8 on your examples. These are the problems I want you to try for homework. Page 21, numbers 16, 20, 24, and 26. Use this time to practice those and look at the homework from the other night. And on Thursday, I'm going to go over this, and then I'm going to start showing you the shortcuts on the derivatives, okay? Have a great day.